Hey, everyone. Tonight we're diving into something that might shatter your childhood dreams. We're talking about what it's really like to be an astronaut. Not the Hollywood version with heroic speeches and dramatic spacewalks, but the brutal, nauseating, bone-crushing reality where your body becomes your worst enemy and every breath could be your last. You might think you have what it takes to float among the stars, but trust me, there's a reason less than 600 humans have ever made it to space, and it's not just because of the math. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because we're about to explore why you probably wouldn't survive even a single day in the most dangerous office in the universe. Chapter 1: The Cosmic Awakening. Congratulations. You've just woken up 250 miles above Earth, traveling at 17,500 miles per hour in a tin can that's smaller than your bathroom. The good news, you're officially an astronaut. The bad news, your body is staging a full-scale rebellion against physics itself. The first thing that hits you isn't the awe of seeing Earth from space, it's the vomit. Space sickness affects about 70% of astronauts, and it's not your gentle car sickness. We're talking projectile vomiting in zero gravity, where your breakfast doesn't fall to the floor because there is no floor. It just floats there, suspended in golden spheres, ready to hit you in the face the moment you turn around. Your inner ear, which has spent your entire life telling you which way is up, has gone completely haywire. The fluid in your semicircular canals is floating freely now, sending confused signals to your brain. Up and down have become meaningless concepts, and your body responds by trying to empty itself of everything you've eaten in the last 24 hours. But here's the twist. You can't just lie in bed and wait for it to pass. Mission Control doesn't care that you feel like you're dying. You have experiments to run, systems to check, and a schedule that was planned down to the minute months before you left Earth. Every moment of nausea costs taxpayers thousands of dollars. And speaking of your sleeping arrangements, forget everything you know about rest. You're strapped into a sleeping bag attached to the wall, floating like a corpse in a body bag. There's no pillow. Your head just floats, unsupported, often causing neck strain that would make a chiropractor weep. The constant hum of life support systems creates a soundtrack of mechanical breathing that never stops, never fades, and slowly drives some astronauts to the edge of sanity. Your sleep cycles are completely destroyed because you experience 16 sunrises and sunsets every 24 hours. Your circadian rhythm, evolved over millions of years to follow Earth's rotation, simply cannot adapt. Most astronauts survive on a combination of sleeping pills and sheer willpower, getting maybe 4 to 5 hours of actual rest per night. But even if you manage to sleep, you'll wake up to discover that your face has changed overnight. Literally, Chapter 2, The Mirror Doesn't Lie. Look in the mirror if you can handle it. That puffy, swollen face staring back at you isn't the result of a bad night's sleep. It's your new reality for the next 6 months. Welcome to Moonface, one of the many delightful side effects of living without gravity. On Earth, gravity pulls blood and fluids toward your feet. Your cardiovascular system has spent decades learning to pump against this downward force. In space, all that fluid suddenly rushes to your head like you're hanging upside down 24/7. Your face swells, your sinuses fill, and you develop a constant stuffy nose that makes you sound like you have a perpetual cold. Your eyes begin to change too, and not in a good way. The increased pressure in your head starts affecting your vision. About 70% of astronauts develop something called SANS, spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome. Your eyeballs literally change shape under the pressure. The back of your eye flattens, causing farsightedness that can be permanent. Some astronauts return to Earth needing reading glasses for the first time in their lives. But that's just the beginning of what space does to your body. While you're floating around feeling like the star of a sci-fi movie, your bones are literally dissolving. Without gravity constantly stressing your skeletal system, your body decides it doesn't need all that calcium anymore. You're losing bone density at about 1.5% per month, roughly 10 times faster than an elderly person with osteoporosis. Your muscles are disappearing too. Even with the mandatory 2.5 hours of daily exercise, you'll lose about 20% of your muscle mass during a typical 6-month mission. Your heart, which no longer needs to pump blood upward against gravity, starts to shrink. You're essentially aging at an accelerated rate, becoming weaker and more fragile with each passing day. And then there's the radiation. Oh, the radiation. Every moment you spend in space, you're being bombarded by cosmic rays and solar particles that would be filtered out by Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field. You're absorbing radiation at levels that would be illegal for nuclear power plant workers on Earth. Your DNA is being damaged with every breath, increasing your risk of cancer, cataracts, and neurological problems. But hey, at least you're living your dream, right? Chapter 3, Space Hygiene, a Wet Nightmare. Time to clean up. Hope you weren't attached to the simple pleasure of a hot shower, because that luxury belongs to the past. In space, water doesn't fall down. It forms floating spheres that can short-circuit electronics, clog air filters, or suffocate you if you inhale one. Your shower is actually a series of wet wipes and Norrin's shampoo that you massage into your scalp before toweling off. Imagine trying to wash your hair with baby wipes while floating upside down. That grease and dead skin, it's staying with you for the duration of your mission. Brushing your teeth becomes an exercise in containment. You use edible toothpaste because there's nowhere to spit. The foam and particles just float around your mouth until you swallow them. Dental floss becomes a projectile hazard. One loose piece could get sucked into the air filtration system and poison the atmosphere for everyone aboard. But the real nightmare is using the bathroom. The space toilet is a marvel of engineering that costs more than most people's houses, and it's about as user-friendly as a medieval torture device. You have to strap yourself down with a harness to prevent floating away mid-process. The toilet uses airflow to suck waste away from your body, but if you don't create a perfect seal, well, let's just say cleaning up floating waste particles becomes everyone's problem. Privacy. What's that? The toilet is in a compartment roughly the size of a phone booth, and everyone can hear everything. The suction system is loud enough to wake the entire crew, so bathroom breaks become public announcements. And if the toilet breaks down, which happens more often than you'd think, you might be using backup bags and manual storage systems that would make camping in the wilderness seem luxurious. Women face additional challenges that mission planners are still figuring out. Menstruation in space is complicated by the lack of gravity affecting fluid flow, and the limited privacy makes dealing with feminine hygiene products a logistical nightmare. Some female astronauts choose to suppress their periods entirely using hormonal birth control, adding another layer of medical complexity to an already overwhelming situation. And speaking of medical complications, Chapter 4, the doctor is out permanently. Get sick in space, and you better hope it's nothing serious. The nearest hospital is 250 miles straight down, and the ambulance takes 3 days to arrive if weather conditions are perfect. You are essentially stranded in the most remote location humans have ever regularly inhabited, with medical facilities that would make a rural clinic look like the Mayo Clinic. Your medical bay consists of a cabinet of basic supplies, bandages, antibiotics, painkillers, and a defibrillator that's more optimistic than practical. No X-ray machine, no surgical suite, no blood bank. If you break a bone, develop appendicitis, or have a heart attack, your treatment options range from make yourself comfortable to hope you can survive until the next supply mission. Every astronaut receives basic medical training, but basic is the operative word. You might know how to inject medication or apply a tourniquet, but performing surgery, forget about it. There's a reason one of the unspoken fears among space agencies is having to perform an emergency appendectomy in zero gravity with whatever tools are available. Kidney stones become a particular nightmare in space. The combination of dehydration, altered calcium metabolism, and the difficulty of proper hydration creates a perfect storm for stone formation. Passing a kidney stone while floating and unable to assume comfortable positions could turn a painful earthly experience into a medical emergency. Mental health issues are equally challenging. If you develop severe depression, anxiety, or experience a psychotic break, there's no psychiatric ward to admit you to. You're trapped in a confined space with the same people for months, with no escape, no privacy, and no way to remove yourself from triggers. Several astronauts have reported experiencing panic attacks when the full reality of their isolation hits them. The psychological pressure is immense. You know that any serious medical emergency could force an emergency evacuation that would cost millions of dollars and potentially compromise the entire mission. The weight of that responsibility, combined with the physical stress your body is under, creates a mental burden that would crush most people. And we haven't even talked about what happens when you need to go outside. Chapter 5: The Vacuum Calls. Spacewalks, or EVAs, extravehicular activities, are often portrayed as the glamorous highlight of being an astronaut. The reality is that they're controlled disasters waiting to happen, where a single mistake, equipment failure, or moment of panic can kill you in ways that would make horror movie writers take notes. First, let's talk about the spacesuit itself. It's not clothing, it's a personal spacecraft that weighs about 280 pounds on Earth. In space, while weightless, it's still incredibly bulky and restrictive. Imagine trying to perform delicate mechanical work while wearing thick winter gloves, a fishbowl helmet, and a life support system that makes every movement feel like you're fighting against hydraulic resistance. The suit's life support can keep you alive for about 8 hours, but that includes a safety margin. If something goes wrong, if you're trapped, if your tools float away, if you become disoriented, that timer becomes a countdown to suffocation. There's no running back inside for a quick break. Once you're out there, you're committed until the work is done or you die trying. The temperature swings are extreme. In direct sunlight, surface temperatures can reach 250 degrees Fahrenheit. In Earth's shadow, they plummet to minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Your suit's thermal regulation system works overtime to keep you from being cooked or frozen, but it's not perfect. Many astronauts report uncomfortable temperature variations that can range from sweating profusely to shivering uncontrollably, sometimes within the same EVA. But the real terror comes from the vastness. When you're outside the spacecraft, there's nothing between you and the infinite black vacuum of space except a tether and some carefully engineered fabric. If that tether breaks, if your thruster pack malfunctions, if you lose your grip and float away from the structure, you become a satellite. A human satellite with about 8 hours of life support, drifting away from help at whatever velocity you had when you lost contact. The rescue scenarios for a free-floating astronaut are limited and mostly theoretical. Your crewmates would need to undock the spacecraft, maneuver to intercept you, and somehow get you back inside, all while you're slowly suffocating and potentially spinning uncontrollably. Most mission planners privately acknowledge that if an astronaut becomes completely untethered during an EVA, it's likely a death sentence. Your hands are your most vulnerable point during spacewalks, even with the best gloves available. Your hands will be destroyed by the end of a long EVA. The gloves are pressurized, which means your hands are constantly fighting against internal pressure to grip tools. After a few hours, your fingernails can be damaged, your hands will be cramped into claws, and some astronauts have reported losing fingernails entirely due to the repeated trauma. Tool management becomes a life or death skill. Drop a wrench, and it becomes space debris traveling at thousands of miles per hour, potentially damaging the spacecraft or creating a hazard for future missions. Every tool must be tethered, every movement calculated, every action performed with the knowledge that a moment of clumsiness could kill you or your crewmates. And speaking of your crewmates, let's talk about the social dynamics of being trapped in a can with the same people for months on end. Chapter 6. Hell is other people in space. Take the most stressful work environment you've ever experienced. Remove all possibilities of escape or privacy. Add sleep deprivation and constant physical discomfort. Then lock yourself in a space smaller than a two-bedroom apartment with your co-workers for 6 months. Welcome to the social nightmare of long-duration spaceflight. Every astronaut is carefully selected for psychological stability, but space has a way of breaking down even the most emotionally resilient people. You're dealing with career-driven type of personalities who are used to being in control. Now trapped in an environment where everyone is equally powerless and dependent on each other for survival. Personal hygiene becomes a social issue when you can't properly wash for months. Body odor accumulates and has nowhere to go in the recycled air system. The station starts to develop its own unique smell, a combination of human sweat, recycled air, cleaning chemicals, and the metallic odor of the machinery that keeps you alive. After a few weeks, you stop noticing it, but new arrivals are often shocked by the assault on their senses. Privacy is an alien concept. You can hear every conversation, every personal phone call home, every bodily function. The sleeping quarters are just curtained alcoves, and sound travels freely throughout the station. When someone is having a difficult day, dealing with bad news from home, or experiencing emotional breakdown, it becomes everyone's business whether they want it to or not. Cultural differences that seem manageable on Earth become magnified in the pressure cooker of space. Different approaches to work, personal space, communication styles, and conflict resolution can turn minor disagreements into major psychological incidents. International crews face additional challenges with language barriers, different management styles, and varying cultural attitudes toward hierarchy and authority. The pecking order on a space station is complex and often unspoken. Technical expertise, mission experience, and national politics all play roles in determining who makes decisions and who follows orders. These dynamics can shift throughout a mission, especially when crew members arrive at different times or when supply missions create new priorities. Romantic relationships and sexual attraction don't disappear just because you're in space, and these feelings can create devastating complications in a confined environment. Space agencies have strict policies about fraternization, but human nature doesn't follow policy manuals. Unrequited attraction, jealousy, or the development of inappropriate relationships can destroy team cohesion and potentially endanger everyone aboard. Communication with Earth becomes both a lifeline and a source of stress. Video calls home are scheduled and monitored, making intimate conversations with family members awkward and artificial. Time delays in communication can make real-time conversations impossible, turning every exchange into a series of delayed monologues. Watching your family live their lives through brief, delayed video calls while you're isolated in space can trigger profound feelings of disconnection and loss. And then there's the food situation, which deserves its own circle of hell. Chapter 7. Cosmic Cuisine, a Gastronomic Nightmare. Forget everything you think you know about space food. Those freeze-dried ice cream novelties you bought at the Science Museum, they're tourist fantasies. Real space food is a study in compromised expectations and the slow erosion of one of life's basic pleasures. Most of your meals come in packages that look like military MREs, because that's essentially what they are. Everything is designed for long-term storage, minimal preparation, and zero-gravity consumption. Flavor is an afterthought, if it's a thought at all. Salt and pepper come in liquid form because crystals would float around and potentially damage equipment or irritate your eyes and respiratory system. Your sense of taste and smell are already compromised by the fluid shift in your head, making everything taste bland and metallic. The space equivalent of a gourmet meal might be rehydrated beef stew that tastes like cardboard soaked in brown water. Fresh fruits and vegetables are rare treasures that arrive on supply missions and disappear within days. Eating itself becomes a technical challenge. Food doesn't stay on utensils in zero gravity. It floats away the moment you stop actively containing it. Most meals require you to squeeze substances directly into your mouth or carefully manage floating particles while they drift toward your face. Crumbs become projectiles that can damage sensitive equipment or get inhaled. Drinking is equally problematic. Water forms floating spheres that can be dangerous if they contact electronics. All beverages come in pouches with straws, and you have to actively suck to get anything out. Carbonated drinks are forbidden because the bubbles don't separate from the liquid in zero gravity, potentially causing choking or aspiration. The psychological impact of bad food is often underestimated. Meals are one of the few remaining comforts and social rituals available in space. And when the food is consistently terrible, it contributes to depression, irritability, and declining morale. Many astronauts report that food dreams, vivid dreams about eating fresh, tasty meals become a common occurrence that makes waking up to rehydrated scrambled eggs even more depressing. Cooking experiments are limited and often disappointing. The equipment available is minimal, and most attempts to improve flavor or texture end up creating floating messes that require cleanup and potentially damage equipment. Some astronauts have tried to grow small amounts of fresh herbs or vegetables, but these experiments are more about psychological benefits than actual nutrition. Digestive issues become common due to the combination of low-fiber processed foods, altered gut bacteria, and the effects of zero gravity on your digestive system. Constipation is a widespread problem that can become medically serious, while others experience diarrhea that makes using the already challenging space toilet a nightmare scenario. And speaking of things that can go wrong, let's discuss the 1,000 ways space can kill you on any given day. Chapter 8. Death by 1,000 Cosmic Cuts. Space doesn't just want to kill you, it wants to kill you in creative ways that engineers spend their entire careers trying to prevent. Every system on your spacecraft is a potential failure point, and every failure is potentially fatal. Let's start with fire, which behaves completely differently in zero gravity. Flames don't burn upward because there's no up. Instead, they form spheres and burn much cooler, making them harder to detect until they've already caused significant damage. Fire suppressors work differently too. and evacuating smoke from a confined space becomes nearly impossible. A fire in space isn't just dangerous, it's potentially catastrophic for everyone aboard. Depressurization is the classic space disaster, but it's more complex than movies suggest. A small hole might not cause explosive decompression, but it will slowly leak your atmosphere into space. You might not notice until you start experiencing hypoxia, confusion, disorientation, and poor judgment that can prevent you from taking appropriate action to save yourself. Larger breaches are immediately catastrophic. You have maybe 15 seconds of useful consciousness before hypoxia incapacitates you. The boiling point of water at zero pressure is body temperature, so your saliva and tears would literally boil. Your blood wouldn't boil immediately due to your circulatory system's pressure, but you'd lose consciousness long before that became an issue. Toxic gas leaks present another category of threat. The life support systems that keep you alive involve numerous chemicals and processes that can malfunction and release dangerous gases. Carbon monoxide, ammonia, and various synthetic compounds could contaminate your air supply. And there's no stepping outside for fresh air when you're in space. Equipment failures can cascade in ways that create multiple simultaneous emergencies. A power failure might shut down life support, communications, and navigation systems all at once. Computer failures can leave you unable to control your spacecraft's orientation, potentially causing it to tumble uncontrollably while you're trying to fix the problem. Micrometeorites and space debris pose constant threats that you can't predict or prevent. A paint fleck traveling at 17,000 miles per hour can punch through your spacecraft's hull. Larger debris can cause catastrophic damage that turns your home into an expanding cloud of metal fragments and decompressed air. Medical emergencies become exponentially more dangerous when they occur during critical operations. Having a heart attack during a spacewalk doesn't just endanger you, it potentially kills your partner, who might risk their own life trying to rescue you. Psychological breaks can be equally dangerous when the person experiencing them has access to critical systems or life support controls. Communication failures can leave you completely isolated from ground support, forcing you to handle emergencies with only the resources and knowledge aboard your spacecraft. When something goes wrong and mission control can't help, your training and your crewmates are all that stand between you and disaster. But perhaps the most insidious threat is the one that's hardest to detect. The gradual degradation of your decision-making abilities due to stress, sleep deprivation, and the constant low-level physiological stress of living in an environment that's trying to kill you. Chapter 9: The Mind in Orbit. Your brain, that remarkable organ that got you through years of training and selection, begins to work against you in space. The combination of isolation, stress, altered sleep patterns, and physical discomfort creates a perfect storm of cognitive degradation that can turn simple tasks into dangerous mistakes. Sleep deprivation becomes cumulative and irreversible during long missions, even with prescribed sleep aids. Most astronauts operate on a chronic sleep deficit that would be clinically significant on Earth. Your reaction times slow, your memory becomes unreliable, and your ability to process complex information deteriorates steadily throughout your mission. The constant noise from life support systems creates a form of acoustic torture that many astronauts don't anticipate. The humming, clicking, worry, and occasional alarms never stop. There's no quiet place to retreat to, no moment of true silence. This constant auditory stress contributes to irritability, difficulty concentrating, and increased susceptibility to anxiety and depression. Spatial disorientation becomes a daily challenge that your brain never fully adapts to. Without consistent up and down references, your spatial reasoning becomes unreliable. Simple tasks like finding specific equipment can become frustrating exercises in three-dimensional navigation that eat away at your patience and confidence. The psychological impact of seeing Earth from space affects different people in different ways. While some experience the positive overview effect, a cognitive shift toward greater environmental awareness and spirituality, others are overwhelmed by the fragility and isolation of human existence. Watching Earth pass by beneath you can trigger existential crises that are difficult to resolve while you're still trapped in space. Communication delays and restrictions affect your mental health in subtle but significant ways. The inability to have spontaneous, real-time conversations with loved ones creates a sense of disconnection that can evolve into depression. Watching your family's lives continue through brief, delayed video calls while you're absent can trigger feelings of guilt, jealousy, and loss. The pressure to perform flawlessly while being constantly monitored creates a psychological burden that many astronauts underestimate. Every action is recorded, every mistake is analyzed, and every sign of weakness is noted by ground control and potentially by the media. This constant scrutiny can lead to performance anxiety and a reluctance to report problems or ask for help when needed. Hallucinations and perceptual distortions are more common than space agencies like to publicize. The combination of sensory isolation, stress, and fatigue can cause astronauts to see, hear, or feel things that aren't there. These experiences can be terrifying when you're already dealing with the stress of being in a life-threatening environment. The return journey often brings its own psychological challenges. After months of adaptation to zero gravity, the prospect of returning to Earth's gravitational field can trigger anxiety about readaptation. Some astronauts develop a form of agoraphobia about leaving the confines of their spacecraft, despite intellectually knowing that Earth is safer than space. But even if your mind holds together, your body is falling apart in ways that no amount of exercise can prevent. Chapter 10. Physical disintegration. Every day you spend in space, your body is quietly betraying you in ways that would alarm any doctor on Earth. The human body evolved over millions of years to function under the constant stress of gravity, and removing that stress triggers a cascade of physiological changes that range from inconvenient to permanently damaging. Your bones are dissolving at a rate that would be considered a medical emergency on Earth. Hip and spine bone density decreases by about 1.5% per month, while some weight-bearing bones lose density even faster. This isn't just temporary. Some bone loss may be permanent. Astronauts returning from 6-month missions often have bone density comparable to elderly patients with severe osteoporosis. Your muscles are wasting away despite the mandatory 2.5 hours of daily exercise. The resistance machines available in space can't fully replicate the constant work your muscles do on Earth just to keep you upright. Leg muscles suffer the most, sometimes losing 20% of their mass during long missions. Your back muscles weaken because they're no longer needed to support your spine against gravity. Your cardiovascular system is deconditioning in dangerous ways. Your heart muscle weakens because it no longer needs to pump blood upward against gravity. Your blood volume decreases because your body perceives the fluid shift to your head as excess volume that needs to be eliminated. When you return to Earth, standing up can cause fainting due to orthostatic intolerance. Your cardiovascular system can no longer efficiently pump blood to your brain when you're upright. Your eyes are changing in ways that may be irreversible. The increased intracranial pressure from fluid shift can cause your optic nerve to swell and the back of your eyeball to flatten. This condition, called SANS spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, affects about 70% of astronauts and can cause permanent vision changes. Some astronauts have required prescription glasses for the first time after returning from space. Your immune system becomes compromised, making you more susceptible to infections and slower to heal from injuries. The stress of spaceflight, radiation exposure, and altered sleep patterns all contribute to immune dysfunction. Simple cuts take longer to heal, and your ability to fight off viral and bacterial infections is reduced. Kidney stones become a significant risk due to the combination of altered calcium metabolism, dehydration, and the difficulty of maintaining proper hydration in space. The pain of passing a kidney stone while floating in zero gravity, unable to assume comfortable positions, is described by affected astronauts as one of the worst experiences possible. Your balance system never fully recovers its Earth normal function after extended spaceflight. The otolith organs in your inner ear, which detect gravity and linear acceleration, become hypersensitive after months of disuse. Upon return to Earth, many astronauts experience persistent dizziness, spatial disorientation, and motion sickness that can last for weeks or months. Radiation exposure is accumulating in your body every moment you're in space, causing DNA damage that increases your lifetime risk of cancer. During solar particle events, radiation levels can spike to dangerous levels, forcing crew members to shelter in the most protected areas of their spacecraft. Even normal background radiation exposure during a 6-month mission equals about 10 times the annual limit for radiation workers on Earth. Your gastrointestinal system struggles to function normally without gravity to assist the movement of food through your digestive tract. Many astronauts experience persistent constipation, which can become medically serious if not managed properly. The combination of processed foods, stress, and altered gut bacteria can cause ongoing digestive problems. And all of these changes are happening simultaneously, creating a cascade of health problems that interact and amplify each other. Yet somehow, this is still considered the easy part of being an astronaut. Chapter 11. The Survival Laboratory. Now that your body is systematically failing and your mind is under constant stress, it's time to do some actual work. Because, contrary to popular belief, astronauts aren't just floating around taking pictures of Earth. You're conducting critical scientific experiments with equipment worth millions of dollars. And every mistake could compromise months or years of research. Working in zero gravity turns every simple task into a complex three-dimensional puzzle. That wrench you need, it's floating somewhere behind you, slowly rotating in a way that makes it nearly impossible to grab cleanly. The experiment you're setting up requires precise measurements, but your hands are shaking from caffeine withdrawal because the coffee in space tastes like liquid cardboard. Many experiments require extremely precise conditions, specific temperatures, exact timing, careful handling of delicate samples. But you're operating in an environment where temperature control is challenging, where you can't set anything down without it floating away, and where the slightest mistake can contaminate samples that took months to prepare and years to get approved for flight. Microscopy work becomes an exercise in frustration when both you and the microscope are floating freely. Try to focus on a specimen while you're gently drifting in one direction and the equipment is drifting in another. Many astronauts report that tasks that would take minutes on Earth can take hours in space. Not because they're more difficult, but because everything requires additional steps to control movement and position. The constant pressure to document everything adds another layer of complexity. Every experiment must be photographed, every step must be recorded, and every result must be carefully logged. But cameras float away, recording equipment malfunctions, and the simple act of writing notes becomes challenging when the pen, paper, and your hand are all moving independently through space. Time management becomes critical when your work schedule is planned down to 5-minute increments. Mission control expects specific experiments to be completed at specific times, often coordinated with ground-based research or with precise orbital positions. But when a simple task takes 3 times longer than expected because you dropped a crucial component and had to hunt for it in the ventilation system, your entire day's schedule becomes compromised. Equipment failures take on a new dimension of urgency when you can't simply order replacement parts or call a technician. If a critical piece of scientific equipment breaks, you might have to wait months for a repair kit to arrive on the next supply mission. Meanwhile, time-sensitive experiments are ruined, and the research objectives that justified your entire mission may be compromised. The physical demands of working in space are often underestimated. Without gravity to keep you anchored, every action requires you to brace yourself against something or hold yourself in position using handholds. Your hands and arms are constantly working to maintain position and control movement, leading to fatigue and strain that accumulates throughout the day. And speaking of hands, let's talk about one of the most underestimated challenges of space work: the fact that your hands are slowly being destroyed. Chapter 12. Destroyed hands, shattered dreams. Your hands, those precise instruments that got you through medical school, engineering training, or whatever specialized field earned you a spot on this mission, are about to become your biggest liability. In space, your hands aren't just tools. They're your primary connection to everything around you, and they're taking a beating that would end most earthly careers. The spacesuits used for EVA's spacewalks are marvels of engineering, but they're also torture devices for your hands. The gloves are pressurized, which means your hands are constantly fighting against internal pressure to grip tools. It's like trying to work while wearing inflated rubber gloves that resist every movement you make. After a few hours of EVA work, your hands will be cramped into claw-like positions from fighting the glove pressure. Your fingertips will be numb from reduced circulation. Your fingernails may be damaged or lost entirely from the repeated pressure and friction against the glove fingertips. Some astronauts report that their fingernails turn black and fall off after extended EVA work. Inside the spacecraft, different problems emerge. Everything you touch has to be gripped more firmly than on Earth because there's no gravity to help keep objects in place. This constant extra gripping pressure causes hand fatigue and can lead to repetitive stress injuries. Your hands never get to rest in the natural, relaxed position they would assume on Earth. The lack of tactile feedback through thick gloves during EVAs makes simple tasks extraordinarily difficult. Imagine trying to thread a needle while wearing winter mittens. Except the needle costs $1 million, and threading it incorrectly could kill you and your crewmates. Many astronauts describe EVA work as an exercise in controlled frustration, where tasks that would be simple on Earth become complex engineering challenges. Hand injuries take on special significance in space because your hands are essential for every aspect of survival. A severe hand injury that might be inconvenient on Earth could be life-threatening in space if it prevents you from operating critical systems or completing essential tasks. There's no light duty in space. Every crew member needs to be capable of full functionality at all times. The psychological impact of losing dexterity and hand function can be devastating for astronauts who are accustomed to being highly capable and precise in their work. Watching your hands become clumsy and unreliable undermines confidence and can contribute to anxiety about your ability to handle emergencies or complete mission-critical tasks. Fine motor control deteriorates progressively throughout long missions. Tasks that require precision, adjusting delicate scientific instruments, performing maintenance on critical systems, even basic self-care activities become increasingly difficult as your hands lose their earthly capabilities. This degradation is often irreversible, with some astronauts reporting permanent changes in hand function after returning to Earth. But even if your hands somehow survive the ordeal, there are bigger problems lurking in the infinite darkness outside your fragile spacecraft. Chapter 13. The Void That Stares Back. Space isn't empty. That's the first terrifying lesson that every astronaut learns. Usually during their first night shift, when they're alone with their thoughts and the vast darkness pressing against the thin walls of their spacecraft. Space is full of radiation, debris, and the kind of cosmic violence that makes terrestrial disasters look like minor inconveniences. Cosmic radiation is the invisible killer that's slowly cooking you from the inside out. Unlike the radiation you might encounter on Earth, cosmic rays are high-energy particles that can penetrate any shielding humans can practically build. They're constantly slicing through your body, damaging DNA, destroying brain cells, and increasing your risk of cancer with every passing moment. During solar particle events, massive eruptions from the sun that send deadly radiation racing through the solar system, you have to take shelter in the most protected areas of your spacecraft. These radiation storms can last for days, forcing you to huddle in cramped spaces while invisible death streams past your walls. Some events are so severe that they would be lethal to any astronaut caught outside during a spacewalk. The psychological effect of knowing you're being slowly irradiated is often underestimated. Unlike other occupational hazards that you can see and avoid, radiation is completely invisible and unstoppable. You might feel fine today, but every moment in space is accumulating damage that could manifest as cancer, neurological problems, or other health issues years or decades later. Space debris presents a more immediate and visible threat. There are millions of pieces of orbital debris, everything from defunct satellites to paint, flecks from previous missions, traveling at speeds that turn even tiny fragments into deadly projectiles. A piece of debris the size of a marble can punch through your spacecraft's hull and kill everyone aboard. Tracking systems on Earth monitor the larger pieces of debris, and spacecraft can sometimes maneuver to avoid predicted collisions. But smaller pieces are untrackable and unpredictable. You might be sleeping peacefully when a fleck of paint traveling at 17,000 miles per hour punches through your wall and begins explosive decompression. Your first indication of the problem might be the sound of air rushing out through a hole smaller than a pencil. The Kessler syndrome, a theoretical cascade where collisions create more debris, which causes more collisions, is becoming less theoretical with each passing year. Some orbital regions are becoming so cluttered with debris that they may become impassable for future missions. You could be part of the last generation of astronauts to safely operate in certain orbital zones. Micrometeorites add another layer of unpredictable danger. These tiny pieces of cosmic dust and rock are constantly pelting your spacecraft at incredible velocities. While most are too small to cause catastrophic damage, they gradually erode your spacecraft's outer surfaces and can damage critical systems over time. The constant bombardment creates a soundtrack of tiny impacts that can be psychologically unsettling during quiet periods. Even your own spacecraft is gradually becoming a threat. Materials behave differently in the space environment. Metals can become brittle, seals can fail, and electronics can malfunction in ways that are difficult to predict or prevent. Your home is slowly degrading around you, and every system has a finite lifespan that's constantly counting down. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of space's hostility is how it makes you acutely aware of your own fragility. Every moment of survival depends on countless systems working perfectly, and you know that any single failure could end your life in minutes or seconds. Chapter 14. When the system fails. In space, Murphy's Law isn't just a clever saying, it's a survival manual. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, usually at the worst possible moment, and often in ways that create cascading emergencies that can quickly overwhelm even the most well-trained crew. Life support failures are the stuff of nightmares. Your oxygen generation system could malfunction, slowly suffocating you with recycled carbon dioxide. The water recovery system could fail, leaving you to dehydrate slowly while floating in an endless ocean of vacuum. Temperature control systems could fail, leaving you to freeze in the shadow of Earth or roast in direct sunlight. These systems don't fail gracefully. A small problem in one system often creates problems in others. A cooling system failure might force you to shut down computers, which could disable navigation and communication systems. Now you're not just hot, you're hot, lost, and unable to call for help. Emergency procedures in space are complex because every solution creates new problems. Shutting down a malfunctioning system might save your life, but it might also disable other systems you need for survival. Using backup systems depletes resources you might need for other emergencies. Every decision becomes a calculated gamble with your life as the stakes. Fire suppression in space presents unique challenges that most people never consider. Traditional fire extinguishers don't work effectively in zero gravity, and the suppression agents themselves can become hazardous in a confined space. A fire might be less immediately dangerous than the toxic gases created by fighting it, forcing you to choose between burning and poisoning. Power failures can cascade through all systems simultaneously. Without electrical power, you lose life support, communications, navigation, and the ability to control your spacecraft's orientation. Battery backup systems provide only limited operating time, creating urgent time pressure to restore power or risk losing everything. Communication failures leave you completely isolated from ground support at the moment you need help most. When something goes wrong and mission control can't provide guidance, you're dependent entirely on your training, your crewmates, and whatever documentation you have aboard. Critical decisions that would normally involve extensive consultation and analysis must be made immediately by exhausted, stressed crew members. Medical emergencies become exponentially more complicated when they occur during other system failures. Having a heart attack during a fire emergency doesn't pause the fire while you receive medical attention. Your incapacitated crew member might be the only person qualified to fix the life support system that's currently failing. The domino effect of system failures means that small problems can rapidly become catastrophic. A minor coolant leak might force you to shut down computers, which disables the navigation system, which prevents you from maintaining proper orientation, which affects your communication antenna alignment, which prevents you from receiving guidance on how to fix the original coolant leak. Spare parts and repair capabilities are extremely limited. If a critical component fails and you don't have a replacement aboard, you might have to improvise repairs using whatever materials are available. This often means creating temporary fixes that might last long enough for a supply mission to arrive. If you're lucky, and if the temporary fix doesn't create new problems. But even when all the systems work perfectly, you still have to deal with the most unpredictable and dangerous component of any space mission: other people. Chapter 15. Cosmic Cellmates. Being trapped in a confined space with carefully selected, highly trained professionals sounds manageable until you factor in sleep deprivation, constant stress, physical discomfort, and the psychological pressure of knowing that everyone's survival depends on perfect teamwork. Even the most compatible people can become sources of life-threatening conflict under these conditions. Personal hygiene conflicts become much more serious when you can't escape the results. When someone isn't maintaining acceptable cleanliness standards in a space where everyone breathes the same recycled air, it becomes a health issue that affects the entire crew. Having a conversation about someone's body odor is awkward on Earth. In space, it can become a heated argument that divides the crew and compromises mission effectiveness. Work-style differences that might be minor irritants on Earth become major sources of conflict in space. Some people are naturally methodical and cautious. Others prefer to work quickly and intuitively. When every task is potentially life-threatening and everyone is watching everyone else work, these differences can create tension that builds throughout the mission. Cultural and national differences can create unexpected friction, especially during high-stress situations. Different approaches to authority, different communication styles, and different problem-solving methods can lead to misunderstandings that escalate quickly in the pressure cooker environment of space. Sleep scheduling becomes a source of ongoing conflict when crew members have different natural sleep patterns or when someone's snoring, movement, or personal habits disturb others. In the confined sleeping quarters, one person's sleep problems become everyone's sleep problems, creating a cycle of exhaustion and irritability that affects the entire crew. Competition for limited resources, whether it's the best food items, preferred workspaces, or access to communication equipment for personal calls, can create resentments that fester throughout the mission. Even the most professional astronauts are human, and human nature doesn't disappear just because you're in space. Mental health issues in one crew member affect everyone aboard. If someone develops depression, anxiety, or more serious psychological problems, the entire crew has to deal with the consequences while continuing to perform their own duties. There's no privacy for counseling, no way to remove someone from the situation, and no backup personnel to take over their responsibilities. Romantic relationships or sexual tension between crew members can destroy team dynamics in ways that are difficult to recover from. Space agencies have strict policies about fraternization, but human emotions don't follow policy manuals. Unrequited attraction, jealousy, or inappropriate relationships can create divisions that compromise everyone's safety. Leadership conflicts can be particularly dangerous when they occur during emergencies. If crew members disagree about the correct response to a crisis, or if someone refuses to follow orders they believe are incorrect, the resulting chaos can turn a manageable emergency into a catastrophic one. Communication breakdowns often start small but escalate quickly in the confined environment. A misunderstanding during a routine procedure can lead to hurt feelings, which can lead to reduced cooperation, which can lead to mistakes, which can lead to accidents. The social dynamics of a space crew are as critical to survival as any technical system. And underlying all of these interpersonal challenges is the constant awareness that you can't escape. On Earth, you can go home at the end of a difficult day, or take a vacation, or request a transfer to a different department. In space, you're stuck with the same people in the same confined space for months, with no possibility of relief or escape until the mission ends. Chapter 16. The Return, when home becomes alien. After months of adaptation to space, returning to Earth isn't the homecoming you might expect. It's another traumatic transition that can be more difficult than leaving Earth in the first place. Your body, which has spent months adapting to zero gravity, now has to re-adapt to an environment it no longer recognizes as home. The moment you feel gravity again, it's not relief, it's agony. Every bone in your body suddenly weighs more than you remember. Your spine, which has been floating freely for months, is suddenly compressed by the weight of your skull, and the downward pull of gravity. Many astronauts describe the sensation as feeling like they're being crushed by an invisible weight. Standing up becomes a monumental challenge. Your cardiovascular system, which has deconditioned in space, can no longer efficiently pump blood upward against gravity. Simply standing can cause fainting as your brain is temporarily deprived of adequate blood flow. Many returning astronauts require assistance to walk and must rebuild their tolerance for being upright gradually over several days. Your balance system, which has adapted to zero gravity, is completely confused by the return of gravitational cues. The world spins around you when you try to move your head. Simple tasks like walking or climbing stairs become exercises in controlled falling as your brain relearns how to interpret sensory input in a gravitational environment. Muscle weakness becomes apparent immediately. Legs that felt normal in space can barely support your weight on Earth. Arms that could manipulate heavy equipment in zero gravity struggled to lift simple objects against gravity. The muscle mass you've lost can't be quickly regained, and some astronauts require weeks or months of rehabilitation to return to pre-flight physical capabilities. Your bone density changes can be permanent. The calcium lost during spaceflight may never be fully recovered, leaving you with an increased risk of fractures for the rest of your life. Some astronauts develop chronic back pain or other skeletal problems that persist long after their return to Earth. Sleep problems often continue or worsen after returning to Earth. Your circadian rhythms, which were already disrupted in space, may take weeks to readjust to Earth's 24-hour day. The psychological stress of readjustment can cause insomnia, nightmares, or other sleep disorders that require medical intervention. Social readjustment can be as challenging as physical rehabilitation. After months of living with the same small group of people, dealing with crowds, traffic, and the general chaos of earthly life can be overwhelming. Many astronauts report feeling anxious in large groups or public spaces after returning from space. The psychological impact of having been to space can create a sense of disconnection from ordinary life. Having seen Earth from space, having experienced the ultimate perspective on human existence, many astronauts struggle to find meaning in everyday concerns that seemed important before their mission. This can lead to depression, relationship problems, and difficulty readjusting to normal work and social environments. Family relationships often suffer during the readjustment period. Your family has continued living their lives while you were away, and you may feel like an outsider in your own home. Children may have grown and changed significantly during your absence, and rebuilding those relationships takes time and effort. Career challenges emerge as well. Having been to space sets you apart from your colleagues in ways that can be isolating. Your experience is so unique that it's difficult to relate to others who haven't shared it, and others may have difficulty relating to you. Some astronauts struggled to find meaningful work after space missions that can match the intensity and significance of their space experience. Medical monitoring continues for years after your return, as the long-term effects of space exposure are still being studied. You become a test subject for life, providing data about the long-term consequences of space travel that may be used to plan future missions or develop countermeasures for future astronauts. And perhaps most disturbing of all, many astronauts report that they never feel completely comfortable on Earth again. They describe feeling like they belong neither in space nor on Earth, but somewhere in between, permanent exiles from both worlds. Chapter 17. The Invisible Cost. The true price of being an astronaut isn't measured in the dramatic moments of launch or the technical challenges of spacewalks. It's measured in the slow accumulation of damage that continues long after the cameras stop rolling and the headlines fade away. Your DNA has been permanently altered by radiation exposure. Every cosmic ray that passed through your body during your mission has left microscopic damage that increases your lifelong risk of cancer. The full extent of this damage may not become apparent for decades, but it's accumulating interest like a toxic debt that you'll be paying for the rest of your life. Your family relationships bear scars that may never fully heal. The months or years of separation, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries, and missed everyday moments can't be recovered. Children grow up during space missions, and those lost opportunities for bonding and guidance create gaps that persist even after you return. Your career trajectory is forever altered in ways that aren't always positive. Being an astronaut is such a unique and extreme experience that it can be difficult to find meaningful work afterward. Many former astronauts struggle with the transition to ordinary careers that feel insignificant compared to the ultimate adventure of space travel. The medical bills for space-related health problems often continue for years after missions end. Vision problems, bone density issues, cardiovascular problems, and other space-related health complications can require ongoing treatment that may not be fully covered by standard health insurance. The psychological counseling and support needed to process the experience of space travel can be extensive and expensive. The combination of trauma, isolation, readjustment, difficulties, and the unique psychological pressures of space travel often requires specialized treatment that continues long after the mission ends. Sleep problems frequently become chronic conditions that affect quality of life for years after space missions. The disrupted circadian rhythms, stress-related insomnia, and other sleep disorders developed during space travel often persist and may require ongoing medical management. Social isolation can become a long-term problem as former astronauts struggle to relate to people who haven't shared their extreme experiences. The astronaut community is small, and finding others who truly understand the unique challenges of space travel can be difficult. The constant medical monitoring required for former astronauts can be intrusive and stressful. Regular tests, examinations, and evaluations serve as constant reminders of the potential health consequences of space travel and can create anxiety about future health problems. Financial consequences often extend far beyond the mission itself. The time spent in training and mission activities often interrupts normal career advancement, potentially resulting in lower lifetime earnings compared to staying in a traditional career path. The impact on children and spouses of astronauts is often underestimated and undersupported. They experience many of the stresses and sacrifices of space travel without any of the glory or recognition. Support systems for astronaut families are often inadequate for the unique challenges they face. And perhaps most significantly, the knowledge that you've pushed human physiology to its absolute limits leaves many astronauts with a heightened awareness of mortality and physical vulnerability that can be psychologically difficult to process. Chapter 18: The Next Frontier, Mars and Beyond. If you think a 6-month stay on a space station sounds challenging, consider the next phase of human space exploration, missions to Mars that could last 2 to 3 years, with no possibility of rescue or early return if something goes wrong. The journey to Mars alone would take 6 to 9 months each way, during which you'd be completely isolated from Earth with no possibility of real-time communication or emergency evacuation. If you develop a serious medical condition, have a psychological breakdown, or encounter a life-threatening equipment failure during the transit, you're on your own with whatever resources and expertise you have aboard your spacecraft. The radiation exposure during a Mars mission would be approximately 100 times greater than what astronauts experience on the International Space Station. This level of exposure approaches the limits of what's considered acceptable for human health, and the long-term consequences are largely unknown because no human has ever been exposed to this much cosmic radiation. The psychological challenges of a Mars mission would be unprecedented in human history. The isolation would be complete. Earth would appear as just another star in the sky, and communication delays would make real-time conversation impossible. The crew would be entirely dependent on each other for social interaction and psychological support for years. The technical challenges of a Mars mission multiply every problem we've discussed about space station operations. Equipment failures that might be manageable with regular supply missions from Earth become potentially mission-ending emergencies when the nearest replacement parts are months away and moving farther away every day. Landing on Mars and working on the surface introduces new categories of risk. The Martian environment is hostile in ways that make space look welcoming by comparison. The atmosphere is toxic, the dust is potentially carcinogenic, and the surface radiation levels are dangerous for extended exposure. The Mars surface operations would require extensive EVA working conditions, far more challenging than anything astronauts face in Earth orbit. Dust storms that last for months could strand crew members. Communication blackouts could leave them isolated from their spacecraft, and equipment failures could strand them permanently on a hostile world. The return journey from Mars would be attempted with equipment that has been sitting in the harsh space environment for years, exposed to radiation and micrometeorite bombardment. The reliability of systems that have been dormant for extended periods would be questionable at best. Crew selection for a Mars mission would face challenges that current space missions don't address. The crew would need to be compatible not just for months, but for years of isolation. The psychological screening would need to identify people capable of maintaining mental health and team cohesion under conditions that have never been tested in human history. Medical planning for a Mars mission would have to assume that complex surgical procedures might be necessary with whatever equipment and expertise is available aboard the spacecraft. The crew would need to be trained for medical emergencies that would be challenging even in the best Earth hospitals. The backup plans for a Mars mission are limited because there are no backups. If the mission goes wrong, there's no rescue possible. The crew would either solve the problem with the resources they have, or they would die on Mars or in space, becoming a permanent reminder of the limits of human exploration. And yet, despite all these challenges and risks, there are people training right now for these missions, knowing full well that they might be volunteering for a one-way trip to become humanity's first Martian colonists, or its first Martian casualties. Chapter 19. The Price of Immortality. Despite everything we've discussed, the physical destruction, the psychological trauma, the social isolation, the life-threatening dangers, there's something about being an astronaut that draws people to accept these risks willingly. It's the closest thing to immortality that humans can achieve. The knowledge that your name will be remembered as long as human civilization endures. Every astronaut knows that they're part of a select group that will be remembered by history. The Apollo astronauts are still household names decades after their missions. The first space station crews, the first space shuttle pilots, the first Mars explorers. These people become legends that inspire future generations and represent the best of human achievement and courage. But this immortality comes at a price that extends far beyond the individual astronaut. The families who sacrifice their stability and security, the children who grow up with absent parents, the spouses who carry the burden of single parenthood, while worrying constantly about their partner's survival, they all pay part of the price for that immortality. The financial cost of becoming an astronaut is enormous, even for those lucky enough to be selected for government space programs. The years of specialized education, training, and preparation often require sacrificing more lucrative career opportunities. Many astronauts emerge from their space careers financially behind where they would have been in traditional professions. The opportunity cost is equally significant. The single-minded focus required to become an astronaut often means sacrificing other life experiences, relationships, and personal interests. Many astronauts report feeling like they missed important parts of their children's lives or their own personal development while pursuing their space careers. The competitive pressure within the astronaut community can be toxic and destructive. With so few opportunities available and so many qualified candidates, the internal politics and competition can destroy friendships and create enemies. Some astronauts spend more time fighting for mission assignments than they spend actually flying in space. The public scrutiny that comes with being an astronaut can be invasive and stressful. Every aspect of your life becomes subject to public analysis, and any mistake or personal problem becomes front-page news. The pressure to maintain a perfect public image can be psychologically exhausting. The expectations placed on astronauts to be perfect human specimens can be crushing. You're expected to be physically fit, mentally sharp, emotionally stable, and morally exemplary at all times. Any sign of weakness or imperfection can end your career and destroy your reputation. The survivor's guilt experienced by many astronauts can be overwhelming. Knowing that you were selected for opportunities that thousands of other qualified people were denied can create a burden of responsibility that's difficult to bear. Many astronauts struggle with feeling worthy of the opportunities they've been given. The physical and psychological damage from space travel often isn't fully apparent until years after missions end. Many former astronauts develop health problems in their later years that may be related to their space experiences. But the connection is often difficult to prove, and the treatment may not be covered by standard insurance. And perhaps most significantly, the knowledge that you've reached the absolute pinnacle of human adventure can make the rest of life feel anticlimactic. Many astronauts struggle with depression and lack of purpose after their space careers end, unable to find anything that matches the intensity and significance of their space experiences. Chapter 20: Orbital Reflections. As we reach the end of this journey through the brutal realities of being an astronaut, it's worth reflecting on what drives humans to accept these risks and sacrifices. The desire to explore, to push boundaries, to achieve the impossible. These are fundamental aspects of human nature that have driven our species from caves to skyscrapers to space stations. The astronauts who accept these challenges aren't reckless thrill seekers or glory hunters. They're typically methodical, risk-averse professionals who have calculated the costs and decided that the opportunity to contribute to human knowledge and exploration is worth the personal sacrifice. They represent the best of human courage and dedication. The space program, despite its costs and risks, has produced innovations and knowledge that benefit everyone on Earth. Medical technologies, materials, science, communications systems, and countless other advances have emerged from the challenges of keeping humans alive in space. The price paid by individual astronauts contributes to progress that helps all of humanity. The perspective gained from seeing Earth from space. The overview effect has influenced environmental awareness, global consciousness, and our understanding of humanity's place in the universe. Many astronauts become passionate advocates for environmental protection and international cooperation after witnessing Earth's fragility from space. The inspiration provided by human space exploration motivates young people to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The visible achievements of astronauts demonstrate what's possible when humans push beyond their perceived limitations. The international cooperation required for modern space programs has created partnerships and friendships between nations that might otherwise be enemies. The International Space Station represents one of humanity's greatest collaborative achievements, bringing together former adversaries in pursuit of common goals. The technological challenges of space exploration drive innovation that often finds applications in unexpected areas. The miniaturization of electronics, the development of life support systems, and the creation of new materials all have benefits that extend far beyond space applications. But perhaps, most importantly, human space exploration expands our understanding of what's possible. Every astronaut who survives the brutal realities of space travel proves that humans can adapt to environments that should be impossible to survive. They expand the boundaries of human experience and demonstrate our species' remarkable ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. The courage required to strap yourself to a controlled explosion and blast off into an environment that's actively trying to kill you represents something fundamental about human nature. We area explorers, risk-takers, and dreamers who refuse to be limited by the boundaries of our birth planet. Chapter 21. The training that breaks people. Before you even get close to space, you have to survive years of training that's designed to push human beings beyond their breaking point. The astronaut training program isn't just difficult. It's a systematic process of physical and psychological stress testing that eliminates the vast majority of candidates who thought they had what it takes. The centrifuge training alone is enough to end most people's astronaut dreams. You're strapped into a machine that spins you at speeds that create forces up to 8 times normal gravity. Your face distorts, your vision goes black around the edges, and you have to perform complex tasks while feeling like an elephant is sitting on your chest. Many candidates pass out, vomit, or simply can't function under these conditions. Underwater training in massive pools simulates the weightlessness of space, but it also simulates the helplessness of being unable to surface quickly if something goes wrong. You spend hours underwater in a bulky spacesuit, performing delicate tasks while your body naturally wants to panic about being submerged. Claustrophobia and panic attacks eliminate many candidates during this phase. Survival training pushes candidates to their limits in extreme environments. You might find yourself in the desert with minimal water, learning to survive for days in conditions that could kill you. Arctic survival training involves learning to stay alive in sub-zero temperatures with limited shelter and supplies. These exercises aren't just about physical survival, they're about maintaining mental clarity and decision-making ability under extreme stress. Altitude chamber training exposes you to the effects of rapid decompression and oxygen deprivation. You experience firsthand what happens when life support systems fail, learning to recognize the symptoms of hypoxia while you're actually experiencing them. The training is necessary, but watching your mental abilities deteriorate in real time as oxygen levels drop is a terrifying preview of what could happen in space. Multi-axis trainer experience involves being spun in multiple directions simultaneously while trying to regain control of your orientation. It simulates the disorientation that occurs during spacecraft emergencies and tests your ability to function when your inner ear is completely confused about which way is up. Many people emerge from this training nauseous and disoriented for hours. Jet training for astronaut candidates involves learning to fly high-performance aircraft in conditions that can be deadly for inexperienced pilots. T-38 jets are unforgiving machines that have killed astronauts during training flights. You're not just learning to be a passenger, you're learning to operate complex machinery under extreme conditions where mistakes can be fatal. Psychological stress testing involves prolonged isolation, sleep deprivation, and high-pressure decision-making under artificial time constraints. Trainers deliberately create stressful situations to see how candidates react when they're exhausted, frustrated, and operating beyond their comfort zones. Technical systems training requires mastering incredibly complex spacecraft systems under time pressure. You need to memorize thousands of procedures, understand intricate technical systems, and be able to troubleshoot problems quickly and accurately. The volume of information is overwhelming, and the consequences of forgetting something in space could be catastrophic. Emergency response training involves simulating every type of disaster that could occur in space, from fires to toxic gas leaks to rapid decompression. You practice these scenarios repeatedly until your responses become automatic. But the training itself is exhausting and stressful. Physical fitness requirements go far beyond normal athletic conditioning. You need to maintain peak physical condition while also meeting the technical and academic demands of astronaut training. The combination of physical and mental stress often breaks down even extremely fit candidates. The psychological evaluation process is ongoing throughout training, with candidates constantly being assessed for their ability to handle stress, work in teams, and maintain emotional stability under pressure. Many candidates who excel technically are eliminated because evaluators determine they can't handle the psychological demands of space missions. And this is just the training. The actual job is exponentially more demanding than anything you experience during preparation. Chapter 22. The detailed science of physical deterioration. Let's get specific about what space actually does to your body, because the details are far more disturbing than the general concepts we've discussed. Medical research on astronauts has revealed that human physiology begins breaking down in ways that are measurable within hours of reaching zero gravity. Bone demineralization occurs at a rate of approximately 1 to 1.5% per month in weight-bearing bones, but some bones lose density even faster. Your hip bones can lose up to 2.5% of their density each month. This isn't just temporary weakness, it's actual bone dissolution. The calcium that's being lost doesn't just disappear. It's circulating in your bloodstream and being excreted, which can lead to kidney stones and other complications. Muscle atrophy follows a predictable pattern that's been documented in multiple studies. Your calf muscles can lose up to 25% of their volume during a 6-month mission. Your spine muscles, which no longer need to support your body weight against gravity, begin weakening within days. Even with the mandatory 2.5 hours of daily exercise, you'll lose significant muscle mass and strength. Cardiovascular deconditioning affects your heart's ability to pump blood efficiently. Your blood volume decreases by about 10 to 15% within the first few days in space as your body adjusts to the fluid shift. Your heart muscle itself weakens because it no longer needs to work against gravity. When you return to Earth, simply standing up can cause fainting because your cardiovascular system can no longer pump blood upward effectively. Neurovestibular changes affect your balance and spatial orientation in ways that persist long after returning to Earth. The otolith organs in your inner ear, which detects gravity and linear acceleration, become hypersensitive after months of disuse. Many astronauts experience persistent dizziness and balance problems for weeks or months after landing. Vision changes from SANS spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome affect approximately 70% of astronauts on long-duration missions. The increased intracranial pressure from fluid shift causes the back of your eyeball to flatten and your optic nerve to swell. These changes can be permanent, requiring prescription glasses for astronauts who never needed them before spaceflight. Radiation exposure accumulates continuously during space missions. During a 6-month ISS mission, you'll be exposed to about 80 to 160 millisieverts of radiation, roughly. equivalent to 80 to 160 chest X-rays. This exposure increases your lifetime cancer risk and can cause acute radiation syndrome during solar particle events. Immune system suppression occurs due to the stress of spaceflight, radiation exposure, and altered sleep patterns. Your body's ability to fight infections decreases, and wounds heal more slowly. The closed environment of a spacecraft means that if one crew member gets sick, everyone is likely to be exposed. Sleep disruption is inevitable due to the 16 sunrises and sunsets you experience every 24 hours. Your circadian rhythm evolved over millions of years to follow Earth's day-night cycle, simply cannot adapt to the ISS orbital period. Most astronauts rely on sleeping pills and still get inadequate rest. Fluid redistribution causes your face to swell and your sinuses to fill with fluid, creating a constant feeling of having a head cold. The redistribution also affects kidney function and can contribute to the formation of kidney stones. Some astronauts develop chronic sinus problems that persist after returning to Earth. Gastrointestinal problems include constipation due to the combination of processed foods, altered gut bacteria, and the effects of zero gravity on digestive processes. Some astronauts experience changes in taste and appetite that make eating unpleasant, potentially leading to nutritional deficiencies. Psychological stress from the physical changes compounds the direct physiological effects. Watching your body deteriorate while you're trapped in space creates anxiety and depression that can affect performance and decision-making ability. The most disturbing aspect is that some of these changes may be irreversible. Long-term studies of astronauts show persistent health effects years after their space missions ended, suggesting that space travel creates permanent alterations to human physiology. Chapter 23. The reality of space medical costs. The medical consequences of spaceflight extend far beyond the mission itself, creating ongoing health problems that can persist for decades. What's rarely discussed is how these health issues translate into real financial and personal costs for astronauts and their families. Space-related medical conditions often fall into gray areas for insurance coverage, while astronauts receive medical care through government programs during their active careers. Coverage for space-related health problems after retirement can be complex and limited. Some conditions that develop years after space missions may not be clearly linked to spaceflight, making it difficult to get appropriate coverage. Specialized medical care for space-related conditions is expensive, because so few doctors have experience treating these problems. SAN-S-related vision problems require specialized ophthalmologists who understand the unique characteristics of space-induced eye changes. Bone density problems need endocrinologists familiar with the rapid bone loss patterns seen in astronauts. Long-term monitoring requirements mean that former astronauts become medical research subjects for life. While this monitoring is valuable for science, it also means ongoing medical appointments, tests, and evaluations that can be time-consuming and stressful. The data collected from these studies helps plan future missions, but doesn't necessarily help treat current health problems. Rehabilitation costs for returning astronauts can be substantial. Physical therapy to rebuild bone density and muscle mass can take months or years. Some astronauts require ongoing treatment for balance problems, cardiovascular issues, or other space-related conditions that affect their quality of life and ability to work. Career limitations due to space-related health problems can affect earning potential for years after missions end. Astronauts who develop chronic health issues may find their options for post-space careers limited, potentially reducing their lifetime earning capacity compared to staying in their original professions. Family impact includes the stress and financial burden placed on spouses and children. who must deal with the medical consequences of space missions. Children may need to provide care for parents who develop space-related health problems, and spouses may face increased medical and insurance costs. Research participation requirements often mean that former astronauts must make themselves available for studies and evaluations for decades after their missions. While this contributes to scientific knowledge, it also represents an ongoing time commitment and potential source of stress. Geographic limitations for specialized care may require former astronauts to live near medical centers that have expertise in space medicine, potentially limiting their housing and career choices. The specialized nature of space-related medical problems means that appropriate care may only be available in certain locations. Experimental treatment options for space-related conditions are often limited and may not be covered by standard insurance. Former astronauts may find themselves choosing between accepting their conditions or pursuing expensive experimental treatments with uncertain outcomes. The psychological impact of ongoing health problems affects not just the former astronauts but their entire families. Dealing with chronic conditions that are direct results of space missions can create feelings of regret, anger, and helplessness that require professional counseling. Legal complexities around space-related injuries can make it difficult for astronauts to seek compensation for health problems that develop after their missions. The unique nature of space-related injuries and the complex legal frameworks governing space activities can create barriers to legal remedies. Documentation requirements for space-related medical conditions can be extensive and complex. Proving that a health problem is related to spaceflight rather than normal aging or other factors can require detailed medical records and expert testimony that may not be readily available. Chapter 24: The Real Isolation of Spacework. The isolation experienced by astronauts goes far beyond simply being far from Earth. It's a multi-layered separation from normal human experience that affects every aspect of life and creates psychological challenges that are difficult for people on Earth to understand. Communication delays make real-time conversation impossible during deep space missions. Even on the International Space Station, communication windows are limited by orbital mechanics and ground station availability. You can't simply pick up a phone and call someone when you need to talk. All communication must be scheduled and is often monitored or recorded. Time zone complications mean that your schedule rarely aligns with the schedules of people you want to talk to on Earth. While you're working during your artificial day cycle, your family might be sleeping. By the time they're awake, you might be in a sleep period or engaged in critical mission activities that can't be interrupted. Limited bandwidth affects the quality and quantity of personal communications. Video calls are often pixelated and delayed, making intimate conversations awkward and unsatisfying. Email and text communications may be delayed or queued, preventing the immediate back and forth that characterizes normal conversations. Monitoring of communications means that privacy is limited even in personal conversations with family members. While not all communications are actively monitored, the knowledge that they could be creates a barrier to open and honest communication about problems, concerns, or intimate matters. Cultural isolation occurs when crew members from different countries have different approaches to work, personal space, and social interaction. Even when everyone speaks the same language professionally, cultural differences in humor, personal boundaries, and social customs can create misunderstandings and conflicts. Professional isolation affects astronauts, who are accustomed to working with large teams and having access to extensive support networks. In space, you're limited to the expertise and perspectives of a few crew members, which can be inadequate when facing complex problems or making important decisions. Social media limitations prevent astronauts from participating normally in online communities and social networks. While some astronauts do post from space, the limited communication windows and mission priorities mean that normal social media interaction is impossible. News and information delays mean that astronauts often learn about important world events hours or days after they occur. This creates a sense of disconnection from current events and can make conversations with people on Earth feel awkward when reference is made to events the astronaut hasn't heard about. Entertainment limitations in space are severe due to storage and bandwidth constraints. You can't simply stream movies, listen to new music, or access the vast array of entertainment options available on Earth. The limited entertainment options available must last for months without becoming boring or irritating. Holiday and celebration isolation is particularly difficult for astronauts who miss important family events, birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, while ground teams try to accommodate special occasions. The artificial nature of space-based celebrations often highlights rather than alleviates the separation from family. Emergency communication problems can be devastating when astronauts learn about family emergencies or tragedies through delayed formal communications channels. The inability to provide immediate support to family members during crises creates feelings of helplessness and guilt. Language barriers in international crews can create ongoing communication problems that go beyond technical work discussions. Subtle misunderstandings, cultural references that don't translate, and the difficulty of expressing complex emotions in a second language can create persistent social tensions. The psychological adaptation to isolation often involves emotional numbing or detachment that can persist after returning to Earth. Some astronauts report difficulty reconnecting with family and friends after developing coping mechanisms for extreme isolation. Chapter 25. The real technical limitations. Working in space means accepting technological limitations that would be unacceptable in any earthly work environment. The constraints of space technology create daily frustrations and safety concerns that significantly impact both mission effectiveness and quality of life. Tool limitations in space are severe due to weight and space constraints. You have a limited selection of tools available, and if something breaks or gets lost, replacement options are extremely limited. Many repair tasks that would be simple on Earth become complex. Engineering challenges because the right tools aren't available. Computer processing power in space is often years behind what's available on Earth. Due to the long development cycles required for space-qualified electronics, the computers that control critical life support systems may be less powerful than a typical smartphone, creating limitations in data processing and system capabilities. Internet connectivity is sporadic and slow when available. Bandwidth limitations mean that simple tasks, like downloading software updates or accessing online resources, can take hours or days. The delay and limited connectivity make it impossible to access real-time information or support from Earth-based systems. Power limitations affect every aspect of space operations. Electrical power is carefully rationed, and personal devices may be limited in their use to conserve power for critical systems. The solar panels that provide power are affected by orbital position, spacecraft orientation, and degradation over time. Storage constraints mean that physical supplies, spare parts, and personal items are severely limited. You can't simply order replacement parts or additional supplies. Everything must be planned months or years in advance and delivered through expensive and infrequent supply missions. Environmental control limitations mean that temperature, humidity, and air quality are often uncomfortable and sometimes unhealthy. The systems that maintain livable conditions are complex and prone to malfunction, and backup systems may be inadequate for extended operations. Mechanical system failures are common and often difficult to repair due to the complexity of space systems and the limited diagnostic tools available. When something breaks, you may need to wait months for replacement parts or attempt repairs with improvised tools and techniques. Software limitations include outdated operating systems and applications that can't be easily updated or replaced. The software that controls critical systems may be years old and lack features that would be standard on Earth-based systems. Communication equipment problems can leave you unable to contact Earth for extended periods. The antennas, radios, and computers that handle communications are complex systems that can fail in ways that are difficult to diagnose and repair in space. Scientific equipment limitations affect the quality and scope of research that can be conducted in space. Instruments may be less capable than their Earth-based counterparts, and experimental procedures may need to be simplified to work within the constraints of the space environment. Manufacturing and repair capabilities in space are extremely limited. You can't simply 3D print replacement parts or machine new components. Most repairs must use existing materials and tools in creative ways that may not provide permanent solutions. Quality control problems affect everything from food to critical equipment. Items that pass quality control on Earth may behave differently in space, and the inability to return or replace defective items means that you often must work with substandard equipment. Documentation and training materials may be outdated or incomplete, making it difficult to troubleshoot problems or perform procedures that weren't anticipated during pre-flight training. The dynamic nature of space systems means that conditions often arise that aren't covered in existing procedures. Chapter 26. The reality of return and readaptation. Coming back to Earth after months in space isn't the triumphant homecoming that most people imagine. It's a medical emergency followed by a long, painful rehabilitation process that can take months or years to complete, and some astronauts never fully recover. Immediate physical incapacitation upon landing means that you can't simply walk away from your spacecraft. Astronauts are typically carried from their capsules and require immediate medical attention. Your cardiovascular system can't handle upright posture, your muscles can't support your weight, and your balance system is completely confused. Rehabilitation requirements include months of physical therapy to rebuild muscle mass and bone density. The exercise you did in space wasn't enough to prevent significant deterioration, and rebuilding your physical capabilities is a slow, painful process that requires professional medical supervision. Bone density recovery is slow and may be incomplete. Some studies suggest that astronauts never fully recover the bone density lost during spaceflight, leaving them with increased fracture risk for the rest of their lives. The calcium lost in space doesn't simply return when you resume normal activities. Cardiovascular reconditioning takes weeks or months as your heart and circulatory system readapt to pumping blood against gravity. Simple activities like climbing stairs can be exhausting for weeks after returning from space. Some astronauts develop orthostatic intolerance that can persist for months. Balance and coordination problems can persist for weeks or months as your inner ear readjusts to Earth's gravitational environment. Many astronauts report feeling dizzy, disoriented, and unsteady for extended periods after returning from space. Some develop chronic balance problems that affect their quality of life. Vision changes from SANS may be permanent, requiring ongoing medical care and potentially limiting career options. Some astronauts need prescription glasses for the first time after space missions, and the long-term progression of these vision changes is still being studied. Sleep pattern disruption often continues for weeks or months after returning to Earth. Your circadian rhythm, already disrupted by spaceflight, may take a long time to readjust to Earth's 24-hour day. Many returning astronauts require medical intervention to re-establish normal sleep patterns. Psychological readjustment includes dealing with the transition from the extreme environment of space to the mundane reality of Earth life. Many astronauts report feeling disconnected from normal activities and having difficulty relating to people who haven't shared their extreme experiences. Social readaptation problems include difficulty relating to family members and friends who have continued their lives while you were away. Children grow and change during space missions, and rebuilding relationships can be challenging. Some astronauts report feeling like strangers in their own families. Career transition difficulties affect astronauts who must find new directions after their space careers end. The skills and experiences gained in space don't always translate directly to other careers, and some astronauts struggle to find meaningful work that matches the intensity and significance of space missions. Medical monitoring requirements continue for years after space missions as researchers track the long-term effects of space. While this monitoring is valuable for science, it also means ongoing medical appointments and tests that serve as constant reminders of the physical toll of space travel. Financial adjustments include managing the costs of extended medical care and rehabilitation, while potentially facing reduced earning capacity due to space-related health problems. The financial benefits of being an astronaut may be offset by ongoing medical expenses and reduced career options. Public attention and expectations can be overwhelming for returning astronauts who may be dealing with serious health problems, while being expected to make public appearances and serve as spokespersons for space exploration. The disconnect between public perception and private reality can be psychologically difficult. Chapter 27. The unique occupational hazards. Being an astronaut involves occupational hazards that don't exist in any other profession. These unique risks create challenges for safety planning, insurance coverage, and legal frameworks that are still being developed as human space activity expands. Launch and re-entry accidents represent the highest acute risk for astronauts. The forces involved in rocket propulsion and atmospheric re-entry are so extreme that any malfunction can be instantly fatal. The safety systems designed to protect astronauts during these phases are complex and not always reliable. Spacewalk accidents can occur when life support systems fail, tools are lost, or astronauts become disoriented outside their spacecraft. The backup systems for spacewalks are limited, and rescue options are often theoretical rather than practical. EVA accidents have resulted in near-fatal situations that were resolved only through luck and improvisation. Toxic exposure risks in space include both intentional exposure to necessary chemicals and accidental exposure to dangerous substances. The life support systems that keep you alive involve numerous toxic chemicals, and leaks or malfunctions can create immediate health hazards in the confined space environment. Fire and explosion risks are amplified in space because of the oxygen-rich atmosphere and the inability to evacuate or seek help. Fire suppression systems in space work differently than on Earth, and some fire suppression methods can create new hazards in the confined environment. Pressure suit failures during IVAs can lead to rapid decompression, loss of thermal control, or life support failure. The complexity of spacesuits means that multiple failure modes are possible, and some failures may not be immediately apparent to the wearer. Radiation exposure limits for astronauts are higher than for any other occupation, and the long-term health effects are still being studied. During solar particle events, radiation exposure can reach dangerous levels that require immediate shelter and may cause acute radiation sickness. Equipment failure cascades can occur when the failure of one system leads to failures in other systems. The interconnected nature of spacecraft systems means that seemingly minor problems can quickly escalate into life-threatening emergencies that require immediate action. Medical emergency response capabilities in space are extremely limited compared to Earth-based emergency medical services. Astronauts must be prepared to handle serious medical emergencies with minimal equipment and no possibility of rapid evacuation to advanced medical facilities. Psychological emergency situations can occur when crew members develop serious mental health problems that affect their judgment or behavior. The confined environment and limited options for intervention make psychological emergencies particularly dangerous for entire crews. Micrometeorite impacts and space debris collisions pose constant risks that can't be completely prevented or predicted. Even small debris traveling at orbital velocities can cause catastrophic damage to spacecraft and potentially kill crew members. Communication failures can leave astronauts completely isolated from Earth-based support during emergencies. When communication systems fail, crews must handle problems using only their training and the resources available aboard their spacecraft. Contamination risks include both biological contamination that could affect crew health and chemical contamination that could damage equipment or create toxic environments. The closed nature of spacecraft environments means that contamination problems can quickly affect entire crews. Emergency evacuation limitations mean that astronauts may not be able to leave their spacecraft or return to Earth quickly when serious problems occur. Unlike other dangerous occupations where workers can evacuate dangerous areas, astronauts may be trapped in dangerous situations for extended periods. Chapter 28. The reality of selection and competition. The process of becoming an astronaut is far more brutal and arbitrary than most people realize. For every person who reaches space, thousands of equally qualified candidates are eliminated. Through a selection process that often seems more like a lottery than a meritocracy. Application statistics reveal the true scope of competition for astronaut positions. Space agencies typically receive thousands of applications for a handful of positions. Recent astronaut classes have been selected from pools of over 18,000 applicants for fewer than 10 positions, creating selection rates lower than the most prestigious universities. Educational requirements go far beyond simply having the right degrees. Most successful astronaut candidates have multiple advanced degrees, extensive professional experience, and achievements that would make them standouts in any field. Having a PhD in engineering or years of test pilot experience may not be enough to even reach the interview stage. Physical fitness standards eliminate many candidates who would be considered extremely fit by normal standards. The medical and physical evaluations are exhaustive and exclusionary, rejecting candidates for conditions that wouldn't affect their ability to perform most jobs, but might create risks in space. Psychological screening involves extensive evaluation of personality traits, stress responses, and interpersonal skills. The psychological profile required for space missions is extremely narrow, eliminating many highly capable people who don't fit the specific personality requirements for extended isolation and high-stress teamwork. Geographic and citizenship requirements limit eligibility for most space programs to citizens of specific countries, eliminating qualified candidates based on factors beyond their control. Even within eligible countries, residence and security clearance requirements may further limit the candidate pool. Age restrictions create narrow windows of opportunity for astronaut selection. Most space agencies prefer candidates who are young enough to complete training and serve multiple missions, but old enough to have established professional credentials. This creates a brief period when candidacy is possible. Security clearance requirements eliminate candidates with financial problems, foreign connections, or past activities that might create security risks. The background investigations are thorough and can disqualify candidates for activities or associations that occurred years before they applied. Political and networking factors may influence selection in ways that aren't publicly acknowledged. Candidates with connections to political figures, military leadership, or space industry executives may have advantages that aren't related to their qualifications for space missions. Interview and evaluation processes are subjective and may reflect the biases and preferences of selection committees rather than objective measures of candidate suitability. The interpersonal chemistry between candidates and evaluators can significantly influence selection decisions. Timing factors mean that qualified candidates may be rejected simply because they applied during a competitive year or when budget constraints limited the number of positions available. Equally qualified candidates applying in different years may have very different outcomes. Backup and alternate candidate positions create ongoing uncertainty for people who have invested years in pursuing astronaut careers. Being selected as an alternate or backup doesn't guarantee future opportunities and may represent the end of astronaut aspirations, despite coming very close to selection. Career sacrifice requirements for astronaut candidacy mean that many people must choose between pursuing astronaut careers and advancing in their current professions. The time and focus required for astronaut preparation often means abandoning other career opportunities. The psychological impact of rejection affects thousands of highly accomplished people who thought they had what it takes to become astronauts. The competitive process creates many more losers than winners, and the psychological toll on rejected candidates is rarely acknowledged or addressed. Chapter 29: The Real Future of Space Exploration. The future of human space exploration looks very different from the optimistic visions promoted by space agencies and private companies. The reality of where we're heading involves challenges and costs that make current space missions look simple by comparison. Mars mission requirements would expose astronauts to radiation levels that approach the limits of what's considered survivable. The journey to Mars alone would take 6 to 9 months each way, during which astronauts would receive radiation doses equivalent to hundreds of chest X-rays, with no possibility of medical evacuation if health problems develop. Life support system complexity for Mars missions would require closed-loop systems that are far more sophisticated and reliable than anything currently available. The inability to receive regular supply missions from Earth means that every component must work perfectly for years without the possibility of replacement or major repairs. Psychological challenges of Mars missions would be unprecedented in human history. The complete isolation from Earth, the impossibility of real-time communication, and the knowledge that rescue is impossible would create psychological stresses that have never been tested in human subjects. Medical care capabilities for Mars missions would need to include surgical facilities and medical expertise that don't currently exist in space medicine. Mars crews would need to be prepared to handle major medical emergencies, including surgery, trauma care, and chronic disease management, with no possibility of evacuation to Earth. Resource utilization requirements for Mars colonization involve technologies that don't yet exist and may not be feasible with current scientific knowledge. The ability to extract water, oxygen, and fuel from the Martian environment is theoretical and has never been demonstrated at the scale required for human survival. Cost projections for Mars missions are so enormous that they may never be financially viable. Conservative estimates suggest that Mars missions would cost hundreds of billions of dollars per mission, making them difficult to justify economically or politically. International cooperation challenges for Mars missions would involve coordinating between countries that may become enemies during the multi-year mission duration. The political stability required for long-term international space cooperation may not exist in the current global environment. Technology development timelines for Mars missions suggest that the required technologies may not be available for decades. Despite optimistic public statements from space agencies and private companies, many critical technologies remain in early research phases, with no clear path to operational status. Risk tolerance questions for Mars missions involve accepting casualty rates that would be unacceptable for any other human endeavor. The probability of mission failure and crew loss for early Mars missions may be so high that ethical approval would be difficult to obtain. Environmental impact of Mars colonization could include contamination of Mars with Earth organisms and irreversible changes to Martian environments that might harbor native life. The planetary protection protocols for Mars exploration may be inadequate for preventing contamination. Legal and governance frameworks for Mars colonization don't currently exist and may be impossible to develop given competing national interests and conflicting legal systems. The question of who would have authority over Mars colonies and how disputes would be resolved remains unanswered. Commercial space development is creating new categories of risk and exploitation that may make space more dangerous rather than safer. The profit motives of private space companies may conflict with safety requirements and astronaut welfare in ways that government space programs have traditionally avoided. The reality is that human space exploration may have reached a plateau where further progress requires accepting risks and costs that are simply too high for rational decisions. The heroic age of space exploration may be ending not because of lack of courage, but because of basic physics and economics. Why the space dream costs more than it's worth. After examining every aspect of what it really means to be an astronaut, from the brutal training to the physical destruction to the limited career prospects, one conclusion becomes inescapable. This is one of the most demanding and dangerous professions humans have ever created. We've seen how space systematically attacks every system in your body, breaking down bones, weakening muscles, damaging vision, and exposing you to radiation that increases your cancer risk for life. We've explored how the isolation and stress can trigger psychological problems that persist long after missions end. We've examined the technical limitations, medical challenges, and career consequences that make being an astronaut far different from childhood dreams of space adventure. But perhaps the most important insight is this. Despite all these challenges, human space exploration continues because it represents something fundamental about our species. The willingness to accept enormous personal costs in pursuit of knowledge and exploration defines much of human progress throughout history. The astronauts who endure these hardships aren't deluded about the costs. They're people who have made conscious decisions that the scientific and exploratory benefits justify the personal sacrifices. They understand better than anyone how dangerous and difficult their profession is, and they accept those risks because they believe in the importance of expanding human presence beyond Earth. The question isn't whether you could survive being an astronaut, it's whether you could accept the trade-offs involved. Could you give up normal career advancement for the chance to contribute to human space exploration? Could you accept the health risks and family sacrifices that come with space missions? Could you live with the knowledge that your career might end with permanent disability or death? For most people, the honest answer is no. The costs are simply too high and the personal benefits too uncertain to justify the sacrifices required. But for a small number of people, the opportunity to push the boundaries of human experience and contribute to scientific knowledge makes the costs acceptable. The space program needs both types of people, those who choose to make the sacrifices and those who support space exploration, while making different choices for their own lives. Progress in space exploration depends on having enough people willing to pay the personal costs and enough public support to fund the enormous expenses involved. Understanding the real costs of being an astronaut shouldn't discourage space exploration. It should encourage better support systems for astronauts, more realistic public expectations, and continued efforts to make space travel safer and more sustainable. The challenges we've discussed aren't reasons to stop exploring space. They're problems to solve. The future of human space exploration will depend on developing technologies and procedures that reduce these costs while maintaining the scientific and exploratory benefits. Better radiation shielding, improved life support systems, and more effective medical countermeasures could make space travel safer and more humane. But until those improvements are developed, being an astronaut will continue to be one of the most demanding and dangerous professions on Earth. The people who choose this career path deserve recognition not just for their achievements, but for their willingness to pay costs that most of us could never accept. So the next time you look up at the International Space Station passing overhead, remember that those points of light represent people who are making extraordinary sacrifices for the advancement of human knowledge. They're not superhuman heroes, they're individuals who have chosen to accept risks and hardships that would break most of us. Whether you could survive a day as an astronaut isn't really the question. The real question is whether you're grateful for the people who have made that choice so that humanity can continue to explore the universe beyond our home planet. Thanks for joining me on this comprehensive look at the realities of being an astronaut. If this deep dive into one of humanity's most extreme professions has changed how you think about space exploration, make sure to like and subscribe for more realistic examinations of careers that push human endurance to its limits.